Okay, guys. So I'm gonna talk to you about this poem, give you a model of what it looks like to annotate for the blue, red, and green colors that we're doing. Remember, blue is for anything that helps us get the basic gist of what the poet is talking about. So, like, we're going to look for vocabulary words, any figurative language that seems a little bit wonky, and we're like, we need to figure out what this is talking about because it's going to impede understanding if we don't figure it out. And also, we're going to summarize what's happening. Once we've done those things, we'll summarize what's happening in the sections. So let's begin. We're looking at Anne Bradstreet's first poem in the poetry packet here. Let's read. In silent night when rest I took, for sorrow ne'er I did not look, I wakened was with thundering noise, and piteous shrieks of dreadful voice. That fearful sound of fire and fire, let no man know, is my desire. I, starting up, the light did spy, and to my God my heart did cry, to strengthen me in my distress, and not to leave me succourless. Then coming up, beheld a space, the flame consumed my dwelling place. Let's go ahead and set up our soaps so we're ready. Soapstone. Okay, we can figure out some of this now, so we're going to go ahead and do that. Anytime we see those first person pronouns, we know that the speaker is the poet. Okay. Okay. So we know that the poet is the speaker of the poem. Okay. This kind of makes it seem like we're going to be addressing God, but if we read on, we're going to see that the audience is not God necessarily here. Can we figure out what the occasion? What did Anne Bradstreet see or notice, or what happened in Anne Bradstreet's life that would make her want to write this poem? Well, it's right here in the bottom. The flame is consuming her dwelling place. Some place that you dwell meaning to live. The place that she lives is being consumed, eaten up by flame. Her house is burning down, hence the title of the poem. House burned down. Okay? And we don't necessarily know the rest of this yet. So let's look up some words, okay? What do we see here? Do we have any words that need to be looked up? Well, succourless. Okay, we assume that it's probably meaning that this person is without succor, but we don't know what succor means. So let's look it up. And then we find that succor is assistance and support in times of hardship and distress. And the verb is to give assistance or aid to. Let's see what part of speech we have here. And not to leave me succorless. Okay, the verb here is leave, and we have an adverb without succor. Succor meaning we have a verb. Okay, without succor. That's the Old English definition. So we know that this is the preposition and this is the noun. So we know we're looking for the noun definition. Okay, so let's Control Alt F that definition in there. We know we need the noun one. Because the way it is right here, this is an adverb pointing back to the verb leave. But then when we look up the conjugation, we know it means without succor, and then succor is a noun, so we look up the noun. All right. She's asking God not to leave her without assistance when she's having a hard time. She's asking God to strengthen her when she's feeling distressed. Okay? Distress is a word that indicates tone. So we're going to write tone here. That's a blue. It's one of our soapstone. So we're putting it in green, actually. I don't see any other vocabulary words that need to be looked up, but we definitely want to look up some of these bits of figurative language. What do we see here that is not literal? Okay. Well, we see the repetition here. Fire and fire. Okay. Repetition. Okay. Now, why? Why would Anne Bradstreet decide to say fire and fire? Well, it could emphasize the layers of fire that's happening here. It's not just fire, but fire within fire. It could, so we're just speculating here. We don't know exactly why, but we're just giving our best guesses based on what we know about fire and what we know about her tone. It could emphasize the layers and depth of the fire she sees. What else? Let's see here. It could add to the chaos she is observing, maybe. Maybe it refers to the chaos in her mind. There are many reasons where she could be repeating these words, and we're just kind of speculating here, but we know it's repetition. That is something that we can't argue against or argue. We can't say that's not repetition. It's obviously repetition. What's left up to us is to figure out why she's repeating these things. So to summarize here, what can we say? Well, she woke up in the night and saw her house on fire. In silent night when rest I took, I wakened, thunderous noise, fire, the flame consumed her dwelling place. And then we know how she responded to this. We know that she asked God for help. And then she asked God for help. Did she ask God to stop burning her house down? No. She asked God to help her to not feel distressed with how she is handling the emotions, which I think is interesting. Instead of asking God, hey, send some rain, she said, help me in my distress. Okay. All right. And then we get the turn here. The turn of attitude. And when I could no longer look, I blessed his name that gave and took, that laid my goods now in the dust. Yea, so it was, and so 'twas just. It was his own, it was not mine. Far be it that I should repine. Okay. So I blessed what? His name, God's name, that gave and took. And this here is pointing back to the word name. The name that gave and took, the name that laid my goods down in the dust, suggesting that God is the one that burned her house down. These two dependent clauses point back to the proper noun name, suggesting that God is the one that did this to her. Interesting. This is kind of summarizing here. I guess we could put that in blue. It looks kind of green against that comment, whatever. All right. Now here, it was just. The word was, this is the pronoun it. It's just, it's a weird old English way to say it was. So we got the pronoun it, the linking verb was, and then the adjective just. We know it's an adjective because it follows a linking verb. Okay, so we need the adjective form. Let's define it. It's a vocabulary word. We'll put it in blue. Control-Alt-M. Just. Okay. So we're looking not at the adverb, but the adjective. What is morally right and fair? Was it morally right and fair for God to burn down her house? That this implies that she felt it was right for God to do this. Repine is another word we might want to look up. We could annotate here for humankind's unworthiness before God, because she's saying that God here is in a position of power and not her. Okay. Theme. Humankind's unworthiness before God. God is in the position of power and not the human. Okay. So then we get this, which kind of points back up here. He might have all justly bereft, but yet sufficient for us left. What does bereft mean? Bereft. Okay, adjective, deprived or lacking of something. I'm going to copy that and put it here. But here it's an old-fashioned verb, because we know that justly is an adjective, and we know, I mean not adjective, it's an adverb because it's got the ly, so it's pointing to bereft, so it has to be a verb. So we're going to add to deprive of something. So God, who is doing the depriving? God. Okay, but yet it was sufficient for him to leave us to that. That's, again, we're going to annotate for the humankind's unworthiness before God. Okay. Control-Alt-M. Theme. Humankind's unworthiness before God. God could have done what he wanted, but chose to leave sufficient for us. Now the rest of this next three stanzas is where she's looking around at the ruins of her house. We get references, a lot of references to the everyday here. So we're going to annotate theme, references to the everyday. Oops. Okay, because it's talking about under your roof, no guest shall sit the everyday, meaning that guests typically come there and sit in there or eat at the table, telling pleasant tales, recount or think about the past, candles, bridegrooms. These are things that happened every day in there. Now, this is again a reference to Ecclesiastes, where it says, vanity of vanity, says the teacher. Everything is vanity, meaning meaningless. It's an Old Testament book. And this is the French word for goodbye. She's saying goodbye to all her worldly possessions here in these last three stanzas, because they are not worth anything. The worthlessness, meaninglessness of possessions.